Hi Mike, welcome back. It's been a while.
A little bit, yeah. It's always good to be back with my friends across the pond here. How you guys been?
Very well. Yeah, all good. Feeling a little bit under the weather today, so I'm hoping I can still pull through the podcast and bring a lot of energy to it.
Oh, sure.
But I'm sure, like a lot since we've last spoken, a lot's gone on in the world as ever. Seems to be every month something new happens. But obviously the hot topic at the moment is Israel and Palestine.
Not Palestine. It's not Palestine. There is no such place. It's Hamas. It is
Hamas.
an Israel-Hamas war. The political organization is Hamas, which is a terrorist organization backed and supported by Iran. They're a puppet of Iran. So realistically, if we were to truly see honest reporting, it would be the Israel-Iran war. And I know there's a bunch of people going, oh my God, how could you say that? Where's Palestine? Show me the country of Palestine. Where has there ever been a country of Palestine? Oh, there isn't. And there never has been. And even the countries in the Middle East, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, none of them recognize a Palestine. So, it's when we start having this conversation and we are trying to understand what's going on and what's going to happen next, we have to understand there are a lot of games that are being played to manipulate the way we think about the story. And that's part of the reason why it's continuing to be a story and an event.
So what is the history of this? Where did it all start and why?
That's tough. I mean, how far back in time do you want to go? You're talking about ancient Egypt, when the Hebrews were living in that region, whether it be Egypt itself proper, the country we recognize today, or the Egyptian Empire, which would include where Israel exists right now. So you're going backwards in time or forwards in time, 1947, 1970. Is it after all the battles? Probably one of the things to remember is Israel started as a much smaller nation. The reason why they're the size that they are today is because Israel won every war that was thrown against them. They didn't commit war to expand. The nations around them committed war to genocide them, and they lost. And Israel took over the land and expanded its borders, like most countries do when there is a war. The winner takes land and resources and property from the loser, and thus Israel expanded. And then Israel, since 1947, have been giving away a bunch of the land that they won through warfare in defending themselves to the size they are today, which includes the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which essentially is land they've given away as well. So that's an aspect that's very important to understand. So this conflict is looking at it from the 1970s. So let's go from the 1970s going forward. You had the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, with Yasser Arafat. They hate and have always hated Israel because the Palestinians, to an extent, are pissed off because they are the Arab losers of the world. I don't say this to, and I'm not saying any of this to be malicious. The reason why there's no nation of Palestine is the Palestinians lost in every fight in the Middle East, and they were rejected. This is why no one in the Middle East, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, none of them want the Palestinian people. They don't want the refugees. They don't want the people because they're and this goes cultural, and it goes back through, going back to the Bedouin days. These are the losers. They didn't want them, and they kicked them out. And that's why they're in Israel, and they have the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And so since the PLO, what have we seen? In modern history, the Palestinians are angry at the Israelis, because the Israelis have won every war. They have expanded their power, their base, and their property. They want what Israel has, and they're trying to take it from them. And as we have gone from the 70s to today, they have expanded into the religious aspect of it because of the influence of Iran, and created Hamas, which is seeking to have a religious genocide against the people of Israel and the United States. Let's not leave that out. Europe and the United States, that includes the United Kingdom. They want to kill you all. They want to kill us all. And the more progressive you are, the more they want to kill you, because they don't believe in LGB. They don't believe in women driving cars. They don't believe in women being able to read and write and work. These are the tenets of their religious beliefs as they express them. Not that they are those beliefs, but that's how they express them. And so they want to kill. And this is the thing. Hamas, their charter, their written documentation, their reasoning for why they committed October 7th, as they told the world, is that they want to genocide Israel. That's how we get to where we are today. Does that, I know it's a little bit, it's not a minute and a half like the mainstream news media wants to put it out there, but it gives it more context, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense in the sense the rest of the Arab world have rejected what you call Palestine, and now they're left in Israel trying to fight or trying to take land from the Israelis. So it's going back to like the 1940s. Like I honestly, I only know little bits of what happened. I'm trying to work it out, and that's why we brought you on to like sort of,
okay,
because we know you'll be well read in this. And I've heard
it's a crazy part of the world.
Something about the British going to war with the Ottoman Empire.
Well, no, that's World War II, and it wasn't the British; it was everyone. So we have to, again, modern day, you don't hear the history of this. What was going on in the 1940s? World War II. What was an element of World War II? The Ottoman Empire was part or aligned with the German Axis front. The Ottomans, which is an empire all its own, and they weren't really good people either, and they had everything from Turkey and Persia. They had a huge empire, and that included much of the Middle East as we know it today. They took the side of the Germans. They lost. Thank God. And they were broken apart by the United Nations. And in breaking them apart, we saw that as the lines were being redrawn for all the different nations to address the plight, the attempted genocide, the near successful genocide of the Jewish people, they decided to give them a place. It was also a fact that no nation in Europe wanted to take all the Jewish people. Even though there had always been historically, and for a long time, there have been German Jews, British Jews, French Jews, Italian Jews. I mean, it's a religion. There's lots of people that are Jewish in the world, but no nation wanted to take those refugees in. And they didn't feel safe in Germany after the war because of, well, the whole process of what happened in the war. So they gave them a land of their own so that they have a safe space that they could claim as their own, that they could survive, rebuild, and everyone else didn't have to worry about having those refugees. They could dump them all into Israel and say, see, you don't have to come to Britain. You don't have to come to France or the United States. Go to Israel. In addition, there is the historical tie. Again, part of the reason why they picked that land is not only because it's leftover land after redrawing the lines of all the other nations, the Arab nations in there in North Africa, but also because there's that historical context going back to ancient Egypt. So it has a historical context, it has a history there, and it's economically expedient, and it is politically expedient. That's 1947, and the British were very big in that conversation because of the influence of the British in India. So that's part of the reason why they confirmed and reaffirmed, yeah, it's going to be what we call Israel today, except it was way smaller. That give a good context, that give you the history a bit. It changes the context. Now, as we learn, as we understand the history of it, suddenly the context of what we're seeing in the news today changes. Because it's not the story we're getting told today. The story we get in a minute and a half doesn't explain all the things that are all the wheels that were moving in the world at that time, and all the reasons that Israel exists now. It's not merely, well, a bunch of Jewish people want land. That's probably the least correct answer that you could possibly give to that, which is the answer that one of the answers that Hamas provides. It's the least accurate of all the things you could probably say about it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who have an opinion on what's going on aren't well informed. They just see that short clip on the news and then get riled up by it and start arguing with each other about it, and it causes more issues in the home nation than it does, than it needs to be. A lot of people who don't understand what is actually going on or what's happened historically will then argue with each other about what's going on in a land far away from here.
Yeah. Now, mind you, I want to be very upfront. I can't stand Hamas. I hate and absolutely detest Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran. Never hidden that in a day in my life. I cannot stand their perspective and their actions. They're terrorists, and I'm happy to see those organizations disappear. That being said, that doesn't mean Israel is a perfect nation. They're not. They have problems just like every other nation in the world. It is also a credible fact that of the Middle East, the most stable, the most democratic nation in the Middle East is Israel. The Palestinians have more rights than they have ever been provided by any other nation in the Middle East to this day. And we've constantly seen that throughout this conflict, going back to the 70s, we have seen that Israel has constantly said, let's live together, not necessarily side by side, but you have your space, we have our space, we will live with you. And we have constantly seen the Palestinians, especially with the influence from Iran after the 1980s, have said, no, we want to genocide you. This is the reason why the two-state option doesn't work. You can't have two nations occupying the same land or next to each other, where one of them is saying, we will coexist, and the other one is saying, we're going to genocide you. That is fundamental to understanding what is going on down there. You have an organization, these people who are saying, we want to genocide our neighbor. You can't make peace with that. That's not political. It's not economic. That's something completely different.
So what's Iran's goal in this? Do they want to spread the influence of Islam around the world? Is that their main objective?
Mostly.
From causing this disruption?
Mostly. I mean, there's economic factors as well. There's strategic factors in this. Let's consider this from a couple of points of view. You have Iran, as stated since the 1980s, actually long before then, but since the 1980s when the Ayatollah took over, and in its current iteration in Ayatollah Khamenei, not Khomeini, but Khamenei, difference in the word slightly, two different people. He wants to genocide Israel. Why? Strategically, they want the land. In terms of politics, it allows them to have more power if they can eliminate one of their biggest enemies, which is a very strong military with lots of resources. It politically hurts the United States, Europe, and Britain, because you are all allies with Israel. So it's a slap in the face of the rest of the Western world. It solidifies their religious ideology, saying that we won because Allah gave us the power to win. We are on a righteous path. Draws in followers, supports the followers that they have, justifies their action. It signifies that they are able to fight and beat Israel, and Israel beat everyone else in the Middle East, then they must be the biggest, baddest person. It's like, okay, there's there's a guy and two bullies. If bully number one is the top because he beat everyone, and some guy comes up and beats that one, none of the other bullies are standing up. He beat the one that beat everyone else. He must be the baddest badass of everyone. That's the thinking of it. And that psychology has a very different impact in the Middle East, which is a very different culture than the West, which is another aspect of this people don't think of. We're talking about very different cultures and cultural norms than what the West has. They do not apply in the Middle East. So when we look at it with Western eyes and go, oh, how are we looking at it? You're looking at it the wrong way. Go look at it from their points of view. And third, the last thing being economic. The last reason why, and this is more so for what happened in October 7th. Israel, under President Trump, there were the Abraham Accords, which were the negotiations of four Arab nations with Israel. It was the biggest movement towards peace that we have seen in the Middle East since literally Carter, Arafat, and Anwar Sadat in the 1970s under Jimmy Carter. Literally the biggest. And it was unprecedented. It's the reason why President Trump was nominated twice for a Nobel Peace Prize for what he had done, unlike Obama getting a Nobel Peace Prize for the potential to do something, and what he wound up doing is drone bombing people in Yemen. That being said, so from that accord, the Abraham Accords, Israel continued to have conversations with Saudi Arabia, who is critical to the military, geopolitical aspects of the Middle East. They are a major player, and it's a major impact if Israel is to make peace with them. They were approaching a deal, an agreement. And the deal was going to be sweetened. And this is the part that really pissed off Iran. It was the week before October. So last week of September, Saudi Arabia announced that as part of their negotiations with Israel, and to make it more palatable for other nations to support the Israel-Saudi Arabia deal, because a lot of countries have problems with Saudi Arabia, they were going to use their influence and have OPEC increase the amount of production of oil and reduce the price of that oil, at least temporarily, to help get more momentum from the world to support this peace deal. That means Iran loses money and power, not just then, but going forward as well, both because of oil production and because their biggest enemies, Saudi Arabia, which hates Iran, and Israel, that hate Iran, are going to be working together. So it doesn't work for them economically or geopolitically or militarily. Does not work for them. And when they heard that announcement, which would bring in the United States, obviously we were going to support that 100%. We want the oil. We want it cheap. We want the help to our ally. It would have brought in Europe. It would have brought in the United Kingdom. They said, oh, hell no. And then we got October 7th, a week later. Gee, what interesting timing. Did you know that? Because it was news. It was international news. Wasn't news in the United States. The Abraham Accord, the conversation between Israel and the Saudi Arabia. It wasn't big news internationally, but it was news. and it completely was thrown under a bus. And then on October 7th, it was never mentioned again. It has never been mentioned since that time. Interesting, isn't that?
Yeah, because I've never heard that. What you've just told us, I've not heard once.
Check with Reuters, check with Times of Israel, Japan Times, BBC, Deutsche Welle. There's articles from all of them about this. Foreignpolicy.com, they covered it as well. There's several articles. You won't notice them. It's kind of like trying to find the statement from Hamas about October 7th. The week after, I think it was October 10th, the leadership of Hamas came out and gave a public explanation of why they committed the atrocity, the absolute act of terror that they committed against the civilian people in Israel, not just Israelis, people in Israel. And their answer was, this will never end because we're going to genocide them. So this is a battle we will never stop fighting. You can't find that statement. It was written, it was published, it was provided to the world. Do a Google search on it. You cannot find the Hamas statement about October 7th from the week of October 10th. You cannot find that in any news organization, international news organization. It's as if it doesn't exist. But we know, if you read all the articles in that week, you know everyone refers to what they said, but you can't find it. They whitewashed it. It's been gone.
Why do you think they're trying to cover these stories up? Considering the establishment are pro-Israel.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're pro-Hamas. And they have to be. By definition, they have to be pro-Hamas because they are progressive. And progressives, part of the equity is the constant division of any groups of people and the support of the of minorities, of all the smallest bits of those groups they divide. Equity is evil. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Equity is evil because it is about, you cannot unite anyone under diversity or under equity, because it is about the constant division of any group of people you put it on to, and you're endlessly breaking them down into categories. You dehumanize them and make them just a bunch of categories. And then you divide each category and create subcategories to further divide them. So we're not men. We're gay or straight or trans men. We're men because of the color of our skin. We're men because of our political preference, our sexual preference, our height, our weight. These are all reasons, categories in equity, that we are subdivided and subdivided and subdivided so that we're not united. You can't unite. I'm constantly being pitted against everyone else. Why? Well, you're not a Black Hispanic. You're not my height. You're not my weight. You're not my age. You're not my, you may or may not be my same sexual preference, sexual identity. And they start dividing. My income, the field that we work in, it's evil. So understanding that, and the hierarchy of everything that's in that equity group of categories is, they look for the group that has the smallest group, the one with the biggest gripe. Oh, you're fat. Okay, well, there's fewer people who are fat in the world than everyone else, especially obesely fat, supremely fat individuals who are, whether it's a medical condition or a trait of their personality, doesn't matter. Obesely fat people have to be normalized. That must be made beautiful. Not because of the individual. The individual may be a saint. You may love someone because you don't see their obesity, but they are part of equity because, and only because, of their obesity. And that obesity must be recognized as absolutely normal and perfect and healthy, even though it is objectively, medically not healthy. That's objectively a fact. It is medically unhealthy, but it must be preferred. It must be promoted because they're a minority. They're a minority of the population. And so they're held to a higher standard than everyone else in various categories. That kind of mentality, now look at it in terms of politics. Why does Harvard, Cornell University, Columbia, University of Massachusetts, why are these colleges, especially elite colleges, why do they all support Hamas? So much so that in Cornell University, one of their students declared themselves publicly a member of Hamas. They recruited themselves into Hamas and were trying to persecute other students at a university where the professor who supports Hamas is running around saying that the abject, disgusting terror of October 7th was exhilarating. Do you see the connection there? Oh my God. Why? And what's the answer you hear from the left? Well, Hamas, they're persecuted because they don't have power. Sure, they have power. But they don't have power. So they're the only ones who could be oppressed. They're the only ones who are getting, you can call it racism or whatever ism or phobe you want to call it. This is being executed against them because they don't have the power, and therefore they can't be racist or what is it when you hate? It's anti-Semitic. They can't be anti-Semitic because they don't have power, which is stupid. It is on its face, absolutely objectively stupid. And that's why they get the support. And that's why where do those students at Harvard, at Columbia, at all these, Yale, where do they go? Oh, they're the ones who are in charge of journalism. They're the ones who are in Hollywood. They're the ones who are getting elected into offices. And they're the ones that are telling us, no, you don't understand. From the river to the sea. That's Rashida Tlaib. That's the New York Times reporting. That's Hollywood reporting. How dare you not agree? The media doesn't support Israel. They support Hamas and terrorism. They just word it nicely.
So the way you just gave a comparison around the equity side of things and obviously fat people being made beautiful in the eyes of the left, and then you made that similarity with what's going on the other side of the world in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Is it sort of becoming, because what I'm seeing, I'm definitely seeing this is becoming more of a trend, and I'm calling it a trend because that's what the left seem to do, is making a trend of supporting the underdog and sort of chucking everything towards the underdog, because I would call fat people underdogs in society because they're not healthy, they're not as powerful, they're not as strong, they're not basically what you need to be in life. And it's the same thing going on with the war. The underdogs that everyone, from what you've been saying, that they're sort of jumping on and backing because they're weaker, they're not as strong, this, that, they've not got the power. So therefore, they must be the victims. And I guess, yeah, it comes in with victimization, right? Everyone's a victim when you're the underdog.
The biggest victim is the one that's right. It's the biggest victim. That's the Democratic Socialists of America. On October 8th, we're marching in New York City as we were still trying to count the dead, international dead. We were finding out that babies, moms, women were being sexually assaulted, which they've only just, it's been what, 2 months now? They just now are starting to talk about the sexual assaults against women that were done by Hamas, and they're just getting to that. They didn't even want to talk about it. It didn't exist until we got our hostages back, and we're hearing from the female hostages over and over again, oh yeah, they sexually abused us. It was part of the torture. They did that to women, and then they would kill them. It was part of what they did on October 7th. You can't hide that, but they tried, and they did. From October 7th until December 5th, they were able to hide from the world and just ignore, oh yeah, the women were being sexually abused by Hamas. But Hamas were, pro-Palestine. okay, let's get this straight. They're looking at them and they have to prop them up. They're the biggest victim because they have no power. They have no nation. Everyone basically doesn't like them. No one cares about Palestine. Quite honestly, if it wasn't in the news, if it weren't for one of the wars, if you aren't Jewish or Palestinian, you have no idea anything about Palestine. You have no clue. People couldn't find it on a map. They have no clue about this. So they don't care. Nobody in the world cared. But that makes them the ultimate victim. And so they have to support them. And oh my God, and let me give it a great way of understanding. So not only the sexual assault was just obfuscated completely. Look at the articles. After about October 17th, every major international news media organization that is run by individuals who graduated from the top schools in the West, all of these reporters, all of them tied back to these top schools where they've been indoctrinated to support the biggest victim. What do we see? They stopped reporting how many people were dead. Internationally, you couldn't find the number of people who were dead. You couldn't find out how many people were taken hostage in total, or which nations had people taken as hostage. Do you know how many Brits, how many of the people of the United Kingdom were killed, that we believe were killed on October 7th, thereabouts?
No.
Well, if you go by the initial reporting the week of, there was an estimate of somewhere around 17 Britons were killed, with around 7 that were expected to be that were missing and believed to have been kidnapped, tortured, used as human shields, were hostages. At least 7. These are minimum numbers. That number today has now gone down to what we believe, that there were 12 Britons that were killed and 5 Britons that are hostages at this moment. At this moment, 5 hostages held by Hamas being tortured and abused as we speak. What happened to the others? That difference between the initial report and the current report aren't people that were found. They didn't find the people in between. Those 7, 8 people, they didn't find them. They didn't find them dead or alive. They just stopped counting them. In the United States, we started off with 33 people who were dead and 22 Americans that were captured as hostages being tortured and abused. I keep saying this because the news media won't. Tortured and sexually abused by Hamas. The number then dropped. We stopped talking about how many Americans were killed by Hamas, and we started talking about, well, the Palestinians, they're going through, and we'll get to that part of it, but they stopped talking about how many Americans were killed, and they totally eliminated the number of hostages. And then when they did refer to the hostages about 2.5 weeks ago, that number went from 22 to 13 to 9. In the space of a week, it went from, when they finally started mentioning it, just as the negotiations were beginning for the ceasefire, it went from 13 to 9. Okay, so what happened to those other 11 people? They weren't found as dead. They're not, they're still missing. No one knows. Those people, gone. No one talks about it. It's just a new number. And then they dropped the number from 13 to 9. Oh, where'd those people go? Where happened to those 4 people? They didn't come home. No one found them. They're not dead. Where are they? Oh, they just don't count anymore. We stopped talking about that. And then Joe Biden came out, I think it was the second day of hostages being released. It was a Thursday. And then he spoke to the world and said, well, he's really focused on 3 Americans, not 9, not 13, not 22. He only had 3 Americans that he was concerned about. Why would he pick 3? Because in every case, lower the expectations of the public so that when he got the one little girl, the child, well, hey, he got a child back. He's a hero. He got in the extension of the ceasefire on day 6, as I recall, he got a 16-year-old. So he got 2 of the 3 Americans that he said he was going to get. And headlines were like, Joe Biden got 2 out of 3 Americans back. Well, that he spoke about. They leave out that little ad, that very important addition that he spoke about. And so the mainstream public, who only pay attention to the headline, that 30-second soundbite, Joe Biden got 2 of the 3 Americans he spoke about back home. 2 of 3 have returned to America. Joe Biden's a hero. He's so great. I've got to vote for Joe Biden and Democrats. They're doing fantastic job. What happened to the 9? What happened to the 13? What happened to the 22? Oh, they just don't count because it's not politically expedient. And by the way, where are the 5 Britons? Yes, I know there's one in Ireland. They got 1 Irish person. How many Irish are there? You know who's the best hero in this entire environment? You know who did the best job? Thailand. If I ever get captured by some terrorist organization overseas, I want the Thai prime minister negotiating for me. Not only did he get 17 Thai nationals back home because he had negotiations without Joe Biden's influence, without NATO's influence, he directly was having a conversation with Iran and Israel. Notice, he wasn't playing games with Hamas. He talked to Iran. He talked to Israel. He got 17 of his people, including the fact that 4 of them we didn't even know were hostages. There were 242. We thought there were 242 hostages. Actually, it turns out 246. There were 4 Thai people we didn't even know were hostages. And he got them back home too. Meanwhile, Joe got 2 Americans with extension by luck, and the British have none. It sounds like I just blew your mind. Everything I just said, internationally verifiable. The Guardian, BBC. You look at any international news media, pay attention to the details. Everything I have just said is absolutely correct. Absolutely verifiable. Every international news media organization. Did you know that?
No.
And so if they found 4 extra Thai hostages, there could be more hostages from other nations that we don't even know about to this day.
We still don't know exactly how many hostages there are. No one is sure. We're now seeing reports that are saying they initially said there were 117. Then that became 200. Then we got 240 to 242. Now we're starting to hear people say, well, it's closer to 250. Well, we don't have any idea. And we're trusting on who? Hamas to tell us how many people they have. We're trusting the terrorists who went around killing civilians, killing babies, and sexually abusing women. I use the R word, but I can't because censorship. Going around and sexually abusing women. We're trusting them to give us the numbers? They're using these people as human shields. Literally, they're putting up the baby and go, I dare you to attack me. By the way, I'm shooting you. Do you understand why I really don't have any respect or love of Hamas and why I'm very angry with Iran? Can you get? I'm not Jewish. I don't need to be Jewish. Again, it's not this stupid thing that, I have to see representation. Oh, well, representation. Palestinians are darker skinned than Israelis. You should be identifying with them. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Let's throw out the stupidity and actually think about this. I really cannot stand terrorists. Look at what we are seeing. And look at the failure. Rishi has failed you. Absolutely has failed you. It is the number 1 news story of 2023 for me. In 2021, Joe Biden abandoned 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan. That's the key. That's the domino that brought us to where we are right now. That started the process. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
Those 5,000 Americans being abandoned, with at least 200 being reported by the United States government of being tortured right now by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. When we abandoned that, We also gave the keys to the Taliban. They opened it up, and everyone from Al Qaeda and ISIS, 5,000 individuals, flooded out and went across Africa, across the world, and every nation started militarizing, and the terrorists started getting active. Then we had Ukraine.
Yeah.
Directly as a result of that, 10,000 Americans were abandoned in that situation that no longer get talked about. 2023, April 2023, 15,000 Americans were abandoned in the Sudan. By the way, about 7,000 Brits were also abandoned in the Sudan in April of this year. A lot of people don't know that. Got abandoned. The last article internationally that I saw talking about this at all was May 3rd of 2023. And then every news media stopped talking about it. Those people didn't come home. We got 300 Americans back. The Brits, you guys did a great job. You got 2,100 of your people out. India, the nation of India, got 2,700 of their people out because there was a 1-week ceasefire. The nation went to hell. Why did the nation go? Why did Sudan go pair up? Because ISIS, having escaped and been released from Afghanistan, went into Africa, and just like Burkina Faso, they started to have civil wars. They started encouraging civil wars. And that's what happened and that's what started getting things going again in the Sudan, which is basically a powder keg. It didn't take much to start them fighting again. And so they started fighting again. Everyone abandoned. Joe Biden ran. He took the embassy, 70 people, plus 100 of the U.S. Armed military, the Marines that were protecting the embassy, took 170 Americans, sent them back home, and told the other 15,000, figure it out. Find your way home. Oh, there was a ceasefire. He went in and got 300 Americans. There were 15,000. He got 300 of them, got them home. In the same time that Britain got 2,100 Britons back home, India got 2,700 home. We got 300 people. The biggest nation in the world, strongest military in the world, the most feared nation in the world, theoretically, the United States, got 300 people. And India, which is not a small nation, not pitiful, they got 2,700 out in the same exact time with less resources and less of intimidation factor in the world. Thailand, you can't even name the prime minister of Thailand. People don't even know where in the world. Forget where it is on a map. They don't know what region of the world Thailand is in. And they got 17 of their people home. America failed. This is the biggest story of 2023. And if you want to look at it from the British perspective, you still have some 5,000 Britons that are in the Sudan, abandoned by your country. Rishi Sunak will not mention their name. The Guardian, the BBC do not talk about them. How many Britons are in Ukraine right now that have been abandoned? I don't think you have anyone left in Afghanistan. I think you did a good job there and got them all home. But what about Sudan? What about Ukraine? And guess what? There are still people in Gaza that are trying to get out. There's at least 270 Americans that are trying to get out of Gaza right now that aren't captured. No one wants to talk about these things. This is important to understand the context of what we're dealing with over there. And if they're not telling you the full story, and they keep changing the story, they keep diminishing, lowering the expectations, and changing the story from obscuring the facts so we can have a clear understanding of what's going on, how are we supposed to ever pick a side and say, oh, I get it?
That's the most confusing thing. That's what I found was the most confusing thing since this happened. With the Russia-Ukraine war, it was a bit more, for me personally, it was a bit more straightforward on how to make sense of it, even though the media were just giving a full one-side story. It was a bit easier to make sense of it. This one,
well, you know more about it. You know more about it. You know more about the information, and more people were talking about all sides and all the parts that are moving in there, for them relatively. And it's easy to verify a lot of it. This is something that's, they Think about it. People don't have to trust me at all. Go and do the searches on Google. Go on to DuckDuckGo. Do the searches for yourself. Find out. You'll see what the international media is doing. Look at your news tonight, right this second, and you will see that they're in every article talking about the return to fighting, that Israel is now backing Gaza and they are going after Hamas again. And every single article is about the Palestinian people, which may be an overreach. Yeah, we can say Israel may be doing too much, but they're talking about they're talking about the Palestinian people, not Israelis. They're not going to tell you how many hostages. Let me correct that. Some of them will say there's about 150 hostages. From where? Which country? Look at your individual country. Do they mention how many Britons are part of that 150? Do they mention how many Americans are? No, we can't say that. Why? Because then you would have a vested interest in getting them back home, because you would demand that your government do something about those people to make sure they are safe and bring them back. But then you would be against Hamas, and therefore they wouldn't be promoted from the left. Oh my God, we're not promoting socialism, so we can't tell you that. You have to be completely detached from this. They're just some group of international people. They love to say that. And internationals, Israelis and internationals. You're my national news media. I don't care about the internationals. I care about my people.
Yeah.
You can see why I get very, this is very aggravating to me because of the implications of
it. What?
How does this play out?
Yeah, I'm going to ask that.
In what respect?
Where do you see this war leading to? Like, where do you see
options? Like what?
Yeah, like
nowhere. It continues. This isn't ending. See, that's kind of like Emmanuel Macron. Again, it's the lowering of expectations. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, came out and said, well, Israel, you have to have a ceasefire. We need a two-state solution. You have to stop, because if you don't, this is a war that will go on for 10 years.
Yeah.
That is one of the most ignorant, repugnant statements I've ever heard. And Macron has a lot of stupid, repugnant statements that he makes. It's not just because he's French. He's an idiot. He's as bad as Trudeau. Well, actually, Trudeau is worse. But understand, why is France saying that? Well, part of it is Israel is aligned with America, and we know that Macron, who's come out this year and said he wants to divest Europe, the EU, from America. He wants to focus on China, not the United States. So this is in part a part of that process. Divesting from America means divesting from Israel are bad guys, so that he can get more aligned with China, who happen to be aligned with Iran. So there's that political aspect of it, which no one will talk about. It's important. It's a reality. This has been documented, but no one wants to talk about that. He puts the onus only on Israel. Remember, Israel is the only ones who have said, okay, we will coexist. Hamas have said they're going to commit genocide. I can try and stop having war, but if you're going to continue to scream that you want to genocide everyone here, the war's not going to end. It's a stupid statement. It's like the war started on October 7th of 2023. No, you fool. It started in 1947. The 7-Day War, the 6-Day War, the 10-Day War. Do you remember these? They exist. Why? Because the war started a long time ago. And it didn't start just now. To say it's going to last 10 years, it's not ending. Hamas and Iran, Hezbollah, and the Houthis have all said, independently and together, that they will never stop until Israel, the existence of Israel, is removed from the face of the earth. By the way, Iran then adds to that, along with the United Kingdom, the United States, and probably all of Europe too. But, that's just the add-on. They're starting with removing Israel from the face of the earth. How do you have peace with that? How? So what's going to be the result of this? Whether or not you get rid of Hamas, which means, okay, you get rid of Hamas, guess what? The PLO doesn't exist either.
Yeah.
What happens? The organization is destroyed or falls apart. They do infighting or they're eliminated. Another organization is going to get $100 million from Iran and hundreds of millions of dollars from the United Kingdom and from the United States, designated as humanitarian aid, which is going to be diverted to some warlord, some power-hungry official who's going to adopt the ideology of Iran because they're backing him, take the money, take the resources, and say, we are the new whatever you want to call it that are going to kill Israel. And then there you go. And it continues. Let's not be blindsided or children or ignorant of this. Literally, what's the difference between, or actually, let me rephrase that. Let's not be stupid about this. The difference between ignorance is a lack of information. It's a lack of knowledge. Stupidity is having access to the knowledge and just rejecting it. The world is being stupid. Macron is being stupid to say that, well, in 10 years, if Israel just was nice people, if they were just nice guys and stopped as they get shot, if they just stop, it'll all be over. And obviously Hamas will just be nice guys, and Israel and Iran will be like, hey, we like you now. Are you what a blithering idiot. No, it's not even close to anything that would be true or reasonable. What's going to happen is they're going to continue to be at war. Why? Because as long as Iran has the Ayatollah behind him, as long as they continue to promote genocide and terrorism around the world as the number one sponsor of terror in the world, as long as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and other various organizations with names that we don't really remember, like the PKK, as long as they continue to exist, this is never going to end. And not only for Israel, they're coming after Europe, they're coming after the United Kingdom, they're coming after the United States. Israel is just the target of the day that we talk about. How many suicide bombers were in France? Do we remember Nice? They didn't even use a gun. They didn't even, forget about the knife attacks, forget about the bombs. They used trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very sobering when you start putting the internationally reported news and you put it down and you go, hey, look at all of this. Oh, that's not what they told me in 30 seconds today. But if I put all the 30 seconds together, if I look at all the stories and I just use your brain for a minute, you suddenly go, oh, wait a minute. That's not the story I was told. Did I break you guys?
Well, yeah, this is like an information overload of something.
Trust me, and this is the summation of what I've been talking about in some parts for the last 2 years, in some parts the last decade, and definitely since October 8th, when we started finding out about what was happening here, which is part of the reason why voices like this get suppressed. It's not approved media. You're not supposed to have this conversation. Harvard, and I'm pointing out Harvard because, I mean, look at what they have done. I'm pointing out Cornell. Look at what they have done. Cooper Union, where a security guard, this really aggravated me. Last month, there were 2 protests at Cooper Union. Cooper Union is a very small college in Manhattan. Okay. A couple hundred students for the entire college. It's a small liberal arts college. And a couple of the students were pro-Israel, wanted to have the return of the hostages, and they were having a protest. There were a couple dozen pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas students who were saying Israel's evil. They didn't address, oh, by the way, yes, Hamas has taken these, they went and got a bunch of civilians, killed them, tortured a bunch of them, dragged them into Gaza, using them as human shields and holding them as hostages. None of the pro-Palestine people want to talk about that. They didn't have an answer for that. The pro-Israel students said, we want the hostages back home. You want peace? Fantastic. You want a ceasefire? Fantastic. Give us the hostages back. Okay. So after about 45 minutes of that protest, the pro-Israel students went into Cooper Union. They went into the library in Cooper Union. There's about 7 of them. This is the total. There were 7 students. The pro-Hamas students decided to come after them. They pushed past all of the security that the school had to come in. The security guards, seeing the mob of pro-Hamas students and the anger of those pro-Hamas students, locked the pro-Israel students in the school library so that they could not get out. But more importantly, no one else could get in. For the next hour, the pro-Hamas students were banging on the walls and the doors, screaming. We can only guess they were screaming that they want to give them hugs, of course. But they were screaming something at these students as they banged on the doors and the walls, trying to get to them. The New York Times, in reporting this is the key. The New York Times, in reporting this, the 7th paragraph detailed what I just described. Students had the protest. They came into the library. The security guard saw what was happening, saw that all the other security guards were getting pushed aside, locked these students in for their safety. The very first sentence of the 8th paragraph: there was no reason to be afraid. Their safety was not in question. How can the New York Times write that? That is stupid. You just detailed someone trying to, harm them. What, they thought that they were the pro-Palestine Hamas students were just there to say, we desperately need to give you a hug. Let's break down the door so we can hug them. I don't think so. I really, really don't. And they dare to say, yeah, but this wasn't a life-threatening, this wasn't a dangerous situation. There's, the fact that the New York City police were investigating, it's overreaction completely. Everyone was safe. That's why they had to be locked in. But that didn't make it to national news. It was reported by the New York Times. You don't have to believe me. Look up Cooper Union. Look at Cooper Union, the protest, and the students locked in the library. Just do a search on it. You don't have to believe me. Don't believe me. Look it up. Read the article. 7th paragraph, 8th paragraph. You'll see exactly what I said. I don't need to make this stuff up. People always say, well, you're just right wing. I'm telling you the sources. Go look it up for yourself.
So I got a question. So you when you mentioned Iran will look to attack Europe, the UK, the US.
Mm-hmm.
The question I've got is, do you think, obviously we've already seen numerous terrorist attacks over the past decade, if not longer. But do you think they will push people into the UK, into Europe, and into the USA as refugees? Because we do see a lot of refugees coming over into the UK, and they are of military-age men.
Yeah, and you're going to see a whole lot more. By the way, Rishi failed. Kamala Harris failed. They both promised they were going to secure the border. We were going to lower those immigration numbers. The United States has never seen numbers as high. 3.2 million illegal aliens entering the United States in 1 year, 2023. That we know of. 169 known or suspected terrorists that we know about running around America as we speak. Kamala Harris, you gotta re-elect her. And Rishi Sunak, oh my God, record-breaking numbers of illegal aliens entering into Britain right after he said he was going to make sure they wouldn't get in. Put them on an island and said, well, we'll leave them there and rot with disease. And they still got into your nation. Gee, what a success story there. I'm not surprised why Labor is looking like they might have to win. I mean, wow, these great people. And now you hear the left, whether it's the Democratic Socialists of America, the colleges, the newspapers, they're all telling you, and by the way, those refugees, we have to make room. We need those refugees. Wait a minute. Egypt isn't taking them. Jordan isn't taking them. Lebanon isn't taking them. Saudi Arabia isn't taking them. The Middle East doesn't want those refugees that are right next door to them. Why do I want to take the people no one else wants? Their own people don't want them. That's a pretty big red flag. But instead, you have the international community saying, hey, open borders, we just got to let them in. They're a refugee. Obviously, Israel's so bad. They need your help. Take them into your home. Screw you. Go to France. Go to Macron. Macron's all happy about this. He's on your side. Go to France. Stay in France. Let the Parisians deal with it. I don't want them in America, not because I don't think they have, some of them, some may have a legitimate refugee status claim. Some. Guess what? In the United States, like every country in the world, to claim refugee status, you need to be vetted. To be vetted takes 18 to 24 months. You don't get to walk off of a plane tomorrow and come to New York City and say, I'm a refugee. No, first you go to the nearest country. That would be Egypt, by the way, or Lebanon or Jordan, but it definitely isn't the United States, and it's not the United Kingdom. Second thing, you don't get to come into my country until we know who you are. That takes 18 to 24 months. You don't get to come. Meanwhile, we hear from the left, the progressive movement, take them, take them, take them. There is no such thing as a border. You've got to take them. Why? They might kill me. Because their people, the government, they elected, the organization that runs their lives, Hamas, has promised to kill me. The people who are backing Hamas, who give them the weapons, who give them the rockets, over 10,000 rockets, well over 10,000 rockets that have been fired at civilians. The people that you've been cheering on, Iran, want to kill me. Why do I want to let just anybody from that region, from that organization, come into our country? Doesn't that sound stupid?
Why is it that Kamala Harris and Rishi Sunak are failing so badly at controlling these borders?
Because they want to get reelected. And that's the answer. They want to maintain power, and they think this will get them to keep power. Oh, we're so sympathetic to those poor people from everywhere in the world. They want a better life. So we have to let them in. Hang on. A couple caveats to that. Let me add a couple caveats. You want a better life. I can appreciate that. And maybe some of you can come. But that doesn't mean I have an open border. It doesn't mean that you can just show up and live in a 4-star hotel in Manhattan, being paid, having taxpayers spend $60,000, double the average American's income, to live on taxpayer dime. No. And I don't have to have all of you in. Just because you want to be here doesn't mean that you get to be here. I want to be a millionaire. I want to have 10,000 subscribers. Hell, I want a new suit. Doesn't mean any of that's going to happen.
Yeah.
No one's running around going, oh my God, Mike needs a new suit. We've got to get him a new suit. Come on, run. No. No one's worried about that. There's no, your desire is not my obligation. We forget that. We forget. Just because you have a feeling doesn't mean I have to share that feeling, or that your feeling has to supplant or supersede my own. And just because you want to be in America, or you want to be in the United Kingdom doesn't mean you get to be there. And it also does not excuse that when you break the law, you're not held accountable. And if we cannot hold them accountable for breaking something as simple as the border, how do we expect that they're going to follow any other law? If that law is arbitrary, then what law isn't arbitrary? But again, Rishi, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden are counting on the fact that the news media is going to say, oh, they're such a great humanitarian. It is the best thing. They are so kind and empathetic and sympathetic. Don't you feel what they feel? Aren't you feeling this? Oh, the greatness. I feel the tingle going down my leg. We've got to reelect these people, give them more power. Who are you? No. Tell me that you don't see that in the news. Tell me you don't see that in the international news, even in the news in your home. Tell me that you don't see exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's something we spoke about on, I think it must have been our first podcast. Everyone cares about how much people like. Everyone feels something now. Everyone feels, instead of thinking logically about things, it's how they feel about it.
Yeah, I don't care about anyone's feelings. I have my own. I don't need your feelings. I'm a human being. I have feelings. Why do I need yours? Why should my life be dictated by your feeling? What makes your feeling more important or better in my life? Oh, there's no answer to that. There is no legitimate answer to that other than, well, I'm right. I think I'm right. And guess what? I'm living my life. So when I think I'm right, I think that's more important. Whether you think you're right or not, that's good for your life, not mine. Again, that's not an answer. But the answer is, well, you have to. You just have to. Ultimately, it comes down to because we said so. Screw you.
Yeah. And is it also that a lot of people are sort of, I don't know if it's just the era that we're living in, but a lot of people are sort of short-term thinkers. So if they want to feel good now and feel happy for letting all of these random aliens into the country, they're looking over the fact that in 15, 20 years' time, the country is going to be in a bit of a situation where
you're looking far too long term. Far too long term. No. Tomorrow they're going to be screwed. I'll give you an example. In 1 year in New York City, received 140,000 illegal aliens. Forget about how many we may have already. We know that 140,000 entered, and it's breaking New York City. 8,000 went into Chicago, breaking Chicago. About 4,000 went into Boston, breaking Boston. The infrastructure is falling apart. We can say the same thing about London and Bristol. There's a few cities that you can say that about in the UK. Breaking your infrastructure. You can't afford these people. You can't house them. You can't feed them. You can't deal with the healthcare or the education cost. And the only way to do that is like what's happening in New York City. They are cutting 5% of the budget, in particular, police and teachers. So your kids are going to be taught less in more overcrowded schools. Your safety is going to be reduced because there are going to be 5% less police. In New York, that means 5,000 less police officers that are going to be walking around the streets, making sure that crimes aren't happening to you. You are going to have more danger and dumber kids while you pay higher taxes for somebody else to come into the country and live a better quality of life than you in your country. And they're the criminal. And that's true in the UK as much as it is in the United States. Who does that to themselves? Well, the progressives had a feeling. They have a feeling. Do you not understand? How can you not have empathy? How can you not submit and obey to their feelings? Oh, you forgot. I'm not a category. I'm a human being, and I have my own feelings. Again, this goes back to equity. you have to submit because you're not a human being. You're a category. So their feelings, because they're human beings, that matters. You, not so much. Oh my God, when we get honest about these things, it's amazing to see how evil this is, you know?
So my big question then there is Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
She feels like it's the right thing to do to let these people in so she can get the power, so they can stay in power, they can get the votes, whatnot. Are they so with that? They're letting all these people in, and if you're saying it's much shorter term than when I was saying 15 or 20 years, which it will be,
Takes a year.
are they not shooting themselves in the foot because they've got another mess to sort out in a year if they do stay in power because of the cards that they're playing right now to stay in power?
No feelings. Well, first of all, how would you know? Look at how they write the stories in Arizona and New York and in the United States this summer. The Biden-Harris administration, you know, we had the Trump wall. It was not completed, but we have a bunch of it built, right? And since what's been happening in the Middle East most recently, the Biden administration has now started rebuilding or building onto the wall. But the wall that already existed this summer, 2023, the Biden-Harris administration welded the gates open. Let me say that again. They welded the gates open in Arizona, and thousands of illegal aliens per day were entering the United States. There's video of it. News media, you can drive on up and just watch them as they flood the nation, hundreds and thousands. And that's per day, not a month, not a year, per day. So when you see that this is the reality that we have and how it breaks everything else, it gets mind-boggling. But the answer for them is don't talk about it. I just described something that should be national news, something that people should be talking about everywhere in the nation. There's news today, a place called Lukeville Port, which is in Arizona, which happens to be a couple miles away from the very gates they welded open. This is a city right next to that. And they have a border crossing. And it's for business. This is a actual established real border crossing between the United States and Mexico. And businesses go across the border on a regular basis, you know, food and trade and all that. The children in the region of Mexico near that border port entry actually travel from Mexico to go to school in America. Stupid. I don't know why my tax dollars are paying for that, but that happens. So this is a regular port of entry. The Biden-Harris administration shut down Lukeville to business and to the people so that they could take all the people, all the individuals, the law enforcement that were working on allowing business to go on, to allow kids to go to school back and forth. They're going to take those people so that they can let illegal aliens enter the United States. Think about that for a second. Does that make sense to anyone? How is that benefiting anyone? That news story is just barely hitting the knowledge base of the nation. The open gates, gone. The Sudan, think about that. 7,000 Britons were abandoned by the United Kingdom this year. And the majority, the overwhelming majority of them are still, God knows where, in the middle of a war zone in the Sudan. And you didn't know about it until I told you about it. What you're saying there's going to be a consequence to these guys in a year? Why? How would you even know? That's the scary part. That's why this is the biggest news. It's not the war. It's not the continuing conflict with Iran. The biggest news, our governments are abandoning our people, and we don't care. We don't know. The news media doesn't care. Our politicians don't care. Where's Rishi? Even my favorite, Kemi. Where are you? Where are these people that you abandoned around the world? Why look, I'm not asking for the perfect answer. I'm not saying, oh, we're going to fly a C-130 over there. We're going to fly a couple of Ospreys or, some choppers over, and we'll just pick everyone up and it'll all be over and it'll be done. We can do that in the afternoon. I'm not saying that. That I understand. That's ignorant. And I'm not saying that we're going to get every single person tomorrow. Maybe it'll take a year. Maybe it'll take 2. God, in Afghanistan, America, we haven't even been trying. In 2 years, could we get 5,000 people out of Afghanistan? I would think we could. Are we trying? Doesn't seem to be. But having some kind of plan, even if it fails, is better than nothing.
Yeah.
What do you think's happened in America? Because I used to look at America and think it was a very patriotic country. Everybody used to be proud to be American. And I used to look at the UK and think people sort of look at especially the English flag and have negative connotations with it. Especially the St. George's flag, just because of football hooliganism. And so because in the UK, if you're waving that flag, then automatically people think you're either a hooligan or you're here to cause trouble.
That's a unique, we don't have that in the United States, where if you have the flag, well, no, that's not true. MAGA. If you have a flag, then obviously you're patriotic, and therefore you must want to make America great, and therefore that's evil, because making your home country great is an act of evil. Seriously, folks, think about that for a second. If you said, if you guys were saying, make the UK great again, I would tell you, more power to you. Fantastic. Yeah. That's a good thing. If you want to say, make Germany great again, other than the 1930s connotations, yes, I'm all for that. Make Japan, or I don't know, Sweden, or pick your country. I don't care where it is. Make it great. Make it the greatest it can be. Angola. Make Angola as great a nation as Angola can become. Good for you. That's a good thing. But in America, make America great is a identifier of evil, according to the news media and the progressive left. I don't know how you do that. So, yes, there are many. The overwhelming majority of Americans are patriotic. They love their nation, and they want their nation to be as great as it can be. At the same time, the overwhelming number of Americans want to keep their heads down and hide, because they're afraid that if they say, I want my country to be as good as it can be, that someone's going to hate them, and they're going to get pointed out in a crowd and go, see, that one's MAGA. They want to make America great. That's an evil thing. They must be a bad person because they want America to be great. We want it to suck because America sucks. So you want to be on our side, and we're going to get the newspapers, and we're going to get the social media, and we're going to go and we're going to say that America sucks, and everyone's going to love us, not you evil people that want to make America great. How dare you want to make America great? I mean, there's only, 3.2 million people that wanted to come into America illegally this year to get $60,000. Oh my God. And they can have freedom, and they can talk, and they can actually not get shot in the middle of the street because they said the president sucks. And how dare we do that? You know what? America sucks. It's the worst place in the world. Doesn't matter how many people want to come here. And you better support me as I say that, because we're too busy to do all of that than actually think for 30 seconds and go, that makes no sense. That makes no sense for any country in the world. And yet that's what's in the White House right now.
Mm.
It drives me nuts. It
So,
literally drives me nuts, guys.
what's your prediction for next year? Do you think Trump gets back in?
Absolutely. There is no charge against him that would prevent him from running.
Yeah.
If he's able to run, he's able to win. So as long as he's alive, he's going to get the Republican nomination. And when every American looks at, and it's as simple as this, were you better off in 2019 than you are today? That's the fair comparison, not 2020, not 2021. You can say 2022 and 2023 and I'd compare 2022 to probably 2016. Bad economy coming out of it, 2016, 2017. So Trump's first year is dealing with the worst year, the failure of the Obama administration as it continued. That would be similar to 2022, dealing with the aftermath of the lockdowns, which I don't blame on any one president. Everyone in the world, all the economies, everything fell apart 2020. I'm not going to blame that on that. Well, that's Trump. Yeah, he sucked.
Yeah.
Name a nation that didn't. Name a nation that didn't fall apart in 2020. There isn't one. So I'm not going to blame. I don't blame that on left or right. 2021 is okay. That's Biden. He put it all back. He took all the pieces, put them back together, and they failed. 2022, he doubled down. 2023, he tripled down. And the failure is compounding. It's only getting worse. Okay, I'm going to compare that to Trump came in. He didn't have a good economy, and things got better. And they kept getting better until the world shut down, which had nothing to do with him. Had nothing to do with his policies. Had everything to do with the world shut down. That's why Trump wins. And he doesn't.
How do you see the world changing, especially like with what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, and Israel? Do you see the world?
Yeah, I get it. But I told you guys the first time, it's going to be 3 simultaneous regional wars, not World War III. That hasn't changed. 2028. There was a general today from the United States, I think it was the Air Force or Navy, speaking about this. Actually, it's the replacement for the Joint Chiefs, General Brown, who replaced Mark Milley, a traitor, in my opinion. But General Brown said, don't sleep on China. We got to be prepared. China looks like they are militarizing. No kidding. Oh, what an amazing statement. And we are looking at 3 simultaneous. Ukraine is not going to end for another 10 years. Middle East is constantly going to war.
Yeah.
They're not stopping anytime soon. Yeah, China's the third one. That's the future. We're going to be in the middle of 3 regional wars that will occupy the entire world. And I don't know that the West is really ready for that yet. We don't have the weapons. We don't have the personnel. We don't have the training. Most importantly, we don't have the mindset.
Yeah.
Your recruitment, the UK recruitment levels are down. The United States, Army, Navy, Air Force missed all of their recruitment numbers. We're not ready.
I've got a friend he's in the police, and he said there's a colleague he works with, and he needs to take a comfort blanket to work with him.
What?
Oh my God.
When he told me, I could not stop laughing.
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
He was saying it's an issue because he can't rely on him when he goes out to knock on someone's door. He doesn't know what's behind that door. And he can't rely on somebody who needs a comfort blanket.
No. Look, I'd go the what's her name? The lesbian granny cop. I'd rely on her more than that guy with the blanket. Oh my God, you've got Linus from the Peanuts. He grew up and became a police officer with his little blankie. Oh my God. And I'm mocking this guy because he deserves to be mocked.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. Look, we don't need social workers pretending to be police officers. They're not going to save people's lives. It's the same thing as if you want to tell me that I need my blankie so I can go in and be a fireman and go into a building on fire. No, you don't. Sorry, you're in the wrong career. Get out. You are a detriment to people's lives. That's the wrong focus. But that's not inclusive, Mike. I don't care. Life isn't inclusive. It's a bunch of exclusive things. Sorry, you don't get to do it just because you want to. You're not qualified. Get out. Do something else. It's the kindest thing we could say. I feel bad for your friend who is the police officer, law enforcement, that has to deal with the massive levels of idiocy in your nation where they have to arrest people for just saying something that someone else goes, I'm offended. So what? I'm offended. Yeah, I heard you the first time. And what's that got to do with my life? The sun's still moving. The moon's still circling the earth. What's happened? You've been offended. You will get over it, or you won't. And I don't care. Life goes on. and the UK police have to go, well, I'm sorry. I've got to go and we've got to arrest you, put you in jail for 2 years, fine you £50,000 because you said a word. What? Makes no sense.
Yeah, and the more, like you said, if these 3 simultaneous wars do start to take form soon, I mean, even if they were to take form further in the future, the West are only going to get worse, and the West are only going to get weaker and weaker as generations come.
Sadly, we've come to the point where we need. There's going to be wars either internally or externally. If we have the external war, that can delay internal wars, because you cannot have nations that survive. Socialism is not something that can coexist with other forms of government. Equity cannot coexist with equality. You cannot have these two things happening at the same time. Socialism is exclusive and singular. If you are socialist, you can only be socialist, and socialism can be the only thing that exists. It doesn't work any other way, and even then, it doesn't work. Equity cannot exist side by side with equality because it is the antithesis of equality. You can't be equal and be categorized and ranked arbitrarily. You cannot get that to work. So if we don't have an external civil war, war going on throughout the world, that energy, that division, that divisiveness is going to happen internally because it's happening internally. Look at our nations. You're seeing cities, you're seeing neighborhoods being divided up politically by all the different categories. Look at London, look at anywhere in Britain. You have entire towns that have been sectioned off based on their various categories, where in the world they're from, their political beliefs, their religious beliefs, all the different categories. How is that beneficial to anyone? You're not, I like to say, you're not trying to be X in my country. So you're not being, I don't know, give me a country's name. I need a country, any country.
Japan.
Okay. So you're not you're not just a, how do I want to word this? American who is Japanese. You're Japanese in America.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense? Or in the United Kingdom. You're not someone who is in the UK and Japanese. You're Japanese in the UK. You're creating a country in my country. My country is now broken, and I have less of a country because there is more of a separation. There's a different country ideology, whatever you want to call it, that's taking up that space instead. You can't survive that. No country can. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with the border crisis,
Yeah,
I think we're right in calling it a border crisis, right?
I, yeah. I don't know what else you would call it. It's not a border vacation.
How do you think how do you think that plays a role in, I don't know, speeding up, or what impact would it have on the potential civil war that America could have?
It could be a really big catalyst. How many terrorists does it take to drive a country insane?
Hmm.
Five? Five in a five in three airplanes. That's about all it takes, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's 169 running around America right now. 169. I would imagine that the numbers running around in the United Kingdom, which doesn't report this number, by the way, at least not that I'm aware of. I've not been able to find it. So if it does exist, someone send me the link. But as far as I know, the UK doesn't report this. How many known or suspected terrorists are in the UK? At least as many as in the United States, because you have an open border. You're part, or you work closely with the EU, which has no borders, and you're physically closer than we are. So I guarantee you have more than 169 known or suspected terrorists running around the UK right now, if not just in London alone. And you're telling me that's not going to have any impact on the socioeconomic stability of the nation? Yeah, eventually it is. They're going to blow up something that someone's going to care about sooner or later.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the powder keg that goes, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Do you think if an internal war kicks off, it's more likely for external forces to come in and start a war with the US
At the end of it,
at the end of
yes.
it when they're weak?
Look, everyone, every country in the world wants the resources of the United States. We have the sweet spot on the planet. Not to say that there aren't sweet spots in other parts of the world, but we've got like really big sweet spots of almost everything. We've got almost all, we may not have the most of every mineral or farming land and type of crop in the world, but we got more than most people. And we got them all. And we've got all of them. So
And you're sort of away from the rest of the world as well a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you've got
so we're
the
not
Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean there.
Yeah. And so people aren't constantly just trying to fight over it all. So we've got this pretty much locked down. It's all pretty in one place, pretty stable, and a lot of everything that everyone wants and needs, all in one place. Everyone has been waiting for the day that they either had the technology to get over here fast enough to try and take our stuff, and or the opportunity. But no one, you can't get to America to take over America with enough forces that we're not going to see coming and stop you. Since that's the case, they need something else. Something else has to happen. We need to be distracted. We need to have a war, wear down our forces, wear down our supplies, fracture the nation, and possibly even break it so that they can then come in and have, and you're not fighting the United States Marine Corps, 270,000 minimum, 250,000 American Marines all fighting to preserve America because they kept their number of recruits at minimum or above. No, you're not dealing with that. Instead, you're dealing with all the Marines of Texas, all the Marines of California, which is a hell of a lot smaller, with as many bullets left over from the Civil War. Well, gee, that's a lot easier to fight, isn't it? And then you have all the people who are your allies that you've been introducing through the open borders for years in there. I mean, who are the number one people entering in America right now? It's not Mexicans. A lot of people go, Mexico, Mexico. It's not Mexicans. They go through Mexico. They're not Mexicans. Venezuelans. And who's right behind them? Angola and China. Gee, That just naturally seems like someone who would come to America. I wonder, so, and you've been seeing this happen for decades. And again, UK, I feel bad for you guys. How many people have been the channel? Not that big. It's not that hard to get across. I feel bad for you guys.
It actually doesn't make any sense from the UK's point of view.
What do you mean?
Just with the setup that we have, that Rishi's not been able to do, I want to say more, but he's hardly been able to do anything at all.
Rishi's been hamstrung because he's Rishi. He was never strong in the first place. I think we said it. We were talking about it. I wouldn't have picked Liz Truss, and I wouldn't have picked Rishi. They were both miserable choices, but they got in because they're milquetoast, because they're lukewarm, because they didn't scare anyone and they didn't make anyone feel bad. And that's not a leader. Leaders make people feel bad. They give people have emotional reactions to leaders. And they're not always rah, rah, rally, I love you. Sometimes you suck, because that's the penalty of leadership. Sometimes you will be wrong. Sometimes people will not see the vision that you see. They don't see the outcome that you see happening, whether it's right or wrong. I don't care which is why I don't care about liking politicians. I don't care. I could despise a politician. I'll give you a great example. John Fetterman. I think he's absolutely unqualified for his job, mostly because he is mentally deficient. That is a medical fact. It's not a personal attack. He is medically not proficient like any other human being. He has the medical issue. And yet, I stand by the fact that yesterday he came out and said that not only is if you say George Santos, a representative in our Congress, was a problem and guilty and needed to be expelled from the United States government because he lied on the campaign trail, not as a member of Congress, on the campaign trail, then you have to get rid of all the other politicians, including in his own party, John Fetterman's party, Democrats, that have done worse. They didn't just lie to get elected. They cheated on their taxes. They were influence peddling. They were abusing the system. They have sex abuse system. Get rid of all those people too. So there's the thing. I don't have to like John Fetterman to support when he makes a good decision. That's an element of leadership. And Rishi doesn't have that. Neither did Liz Truss. And that's why they failed. Mind you, Labor is going to do even worse for you guys.
Yeah, that's my concern. And I think they are looking like they're going to win in 2025.
Yeah. You're going into the opposite cycle that we're in to an extent. You're having a continuation of weak leaders, but you went to the right, and now you're going to go back to the left because the weak leader failed, which is obvious. Weak leaders fail. But unlike Switzerland, Sweden, Italy, Argentina, most of the world is moving to the right. And for some reason, Germany, France, the United Kingdom are going to the left. Why? I don't know. Because the United States is on the left. Makes no sense. Complete failure. But hey, let's keep going down that road. See what happens. Eventually, the law of averages says we have to get something right. I don't think so. At least not anytime soon, and not enough to make it worth the trip. So, yeah, you're going to see England probably go more to the left in the next election, and it's going to cost you guys so much more. You are going to go so deep into a recession, and you are going to be so penalized because you can't keep up. you don't have enough weapons to continue to fund Ukraine. You've already used up all of the ammo that you had. You've used up all of your weapon supplies, your surplus, and you can't make it fast enough.
Mm.
And now we're talking about what's happening in the Middle East. We're talking about what's happening in Africa, which no one is even paying attention to, but Africa's a complete powder keg. And that's going to be, after we get out of 2028, that's the next region that's just going to be ape shit. And then you got China. You're not ready. And you've got the worst leadership lineup coming down the pike. These are the guys that say, well, the answer to all of this is give them more hugs, give them more of our stuff. You're going to be, it's going to be stunning how badly this is going to hurt you in the UK. And France ain't going to come to your help.
No.
Germany's not going to come to your help. There's no one in Europe that's going to come to your help. They all hate you anyway. They've hated you for hundreds of years. They're going to hate you. They still hate you. They're not going to come save you. It's kind of sad.
What's happening in Africa?
Which part? If you're looking at Central and Western Africa, pretty much all of Sub-Saharan Africa, all the way down to literally South Africa, the tip. All of that is in flux. They are being infiltrated by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Their governments are being pushed further and further into civil war or outright revolution. Everyone has made deals China has already made all the deals to take all their resources out and putting very little in except more indoctrination, which is clashing with the culture of the people, which is causing, again, more of that friction, which leads to more civil war. And somebody along the way in the next couple of years, because there's so many resources there, and the next phase of technology, as far as we can tell, it's going to involve the resources that are absolutely abundant in Africa. That's going to be the next big powder keg. It's going to be the Middle East, except magnified by the largest continent on the face of the earth. And that's scary. That's terrifying. There are hundreds of millions, maybe 1 billion people on the continent of Africa. Most people think of Africa, they think of, well, Africa, it's a country. No, it's not. It's well over 36 countries. Over 36 countries on a continent. And most of them don't like each other or anyone else. And now you add in the mix of fanatical Islamic religion and political psychopaths, the socialists and communists. They're in the mix, stirring up the pot because they think they're going to be the winners. Yeah, this is not going to be pleasant. This is going to be bad.
Yeah, that's going to be it's a recipe for disaster. I did hear about ISIS. I don't know, were they training soldiers in Africa? I think I heard.
Burkina Faso and Sudan. Again, Congo, throughout the middle, and we're talking sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah, they're all over. As soon as they got out of Afghanistan, they got released from the prisons, they all ran over into Africa. So it's a direct consequence of what happened in 2021. No one likes to talk about it. No one likes to think about it. And even fewer people will say, well, this is the consequence. No, you can't say that. Yes, I can. Yes, we can. It's been tracked internationally. It's in the papers. You just don't read because it's buried in, paragraph 15 out of 20. And you didn't read the whole thing. You stopped reading after paragraph 3. Well, I kept reading. And guess what? We know where they went. This is the answer.
Is ISIS over there because they can recruit more?
Recruit more, easier to get a lot of resources, a lot of smuggling is easier to do in Africa where there are lower standards. There's less protections in terms of the goods that are being able to be shipped. It's easier to ship them. And you have a lot of impoverished people throughout the continent. And impoverished people will believe almost anything.
They're desperate.
Well, yeah. If I'm going to feed you, you're starving. I give you a loaf of bread. And I say, come back next Tuesday and I'll have another loaf of bread for you. You're more likely to show up next Tuesday. You're more likely to listen to anything I say as I keep you from starving to death. If I keep you able to have electricity at night so you can stay warm, or have lights for your kids, you're more likely to listen to me the next time I talk to you. That's why they go there. They look at the people that the fanatics go after. They go after impressionable people at desperate times of their life, whether it's a cult, a religion, terrorist organization, or cell. They all look at the same people. Horrible time in your life, absolutely vulnerable, absolutely desperate and looking for someone for help. And they're putting their hand out going, I'll help you. Everyone else hates you. Everyone else has ignored you. I'll help you. And that's why they're in Africa.
Plus, when you look at the Middle East, I mean, you've got China not too far away, India, Saudi Arabia. A lot of them countries are they're gaining power in the world. So when you move to Africa, they're not gaining sort of any power in the same way China, India, Saudi. They're developing at a faster rate than any of the countries in Africa, right?
Well, yeah, and they always have. For lots of reasons. It's not just because of racism. It's racism. No. Initially, was that a factor? Yes. But also, it's the fact that Africa developed slower than the world. That's a fact. Okay. Because people in Uganda weren't suffering because of racism when it came time to develop the wheel and to make the printing press and to develop, suits of armor. No, that didn't hold them back. They didn't have the need or the competition in the same way that you saw in Europe. And that's what promoted technology growth. Same thing in China, same thing in Southeast Asia. Very different environment. And because they lagged behind the rest of the world, and this is also true for South America, we saw the same thing in South America that we're seeing in Africa, is they lagged behind the rest of the world because they didn't have the same immediate pressures, competition historically. That meant they're behind. And if you're behind in technology, if I've got a rifle and you've got a bow, I win. If you have a raft and I have a battleship, I win. So this is why, and that's another reason why they have so much stress, so much adversity, and they're so willing to try and take down any other nation. This is why the BRICS, the BRICS, which is an assortment of Brazil, Russia, and a couple of other nations that are trying to give an alternative to the dollar. Why? Because they hate the dollar. That's America. That's someone who has technology and has more superiority than they do. They want to take them down. They can't beat us militarily. They can't beat us in terms of technology, but they can withhold the raw resources and they can withhold the economy. And that's how they can win. That's one of the battlefields for the future. 2030, 2040, you'll see. I'd love to be wrong, but I don't think I am.
Yeah, that one's a worrying one. Well, they're all equally quite worrying.
Well, you know what isn't? Climate change. Notice we haven't mentioned climate change once because it's not a threat. It's not the biggest issue to face mankind. It's just not.
Yeah,
it's a good distraction.
Climate change is starting to lose It's popularity.
Gee, that kind of happens when you've been wrong in every single prediction you have ever made since 1958.
Yeah,
50
I saw
years
something
of
about
being
this.
wrong. Yeah, I'm surprised you got popular ever.
Yeah, because they always did a 10-year predictions, right? And then every 10 years, they just do a new prediction. They don't even talk about the last one that they did.
Well, the answer is always the same. Well, it hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. The world's going to suffer and die. How dare you? How dare you not take me seriously? No, of course not, because it's not serious. It's not. And here's the ultimate thing about climate change. Here's the ultimate thing. You are the most, you have to be the most arrogant of asses to think that if the climate of the planet changed significantly, which it will, let me be very clear about that, which it will, because it has in the past, and there is nothing that has changed on the planet Earth in the solar system that has changed that we can somehow freeze the planet in place. We cannot stop the temperature from changing any more than we can change the speed at which the Earth turns. We can't do it. So we can't predict tomorrow's weather better than 50-50, and that's guessing a hell of a lot. You're telling me we're going to change the, how arrogant. If the weather were to change significantly, there is nothing that we can do today, and probably in the next 50 to 100 years, there is nothing we can do to stop it. If the planet wants to become an ice ball again, it will. If the planet wants to become a desert again, it will. Notice it's already done these things dozens of times in the past. There's nothing that we can do to stop it from happening dozens of times in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, the climate and how the planet behaves is something that's completely outside of human control.
It's outside of our understanding.
Yeah, well, if you look at the normal seasons that we do understand to a degree, you've got winter, summer, spring, autumn. All it seems like is climate changes is just a different cycle, which is on a much larger scale. So whereas winter, it just goes a bit colder, and summer, it goes a bit hotter. This is on a bigger scale where the Earth goes through its cycle and it does burn up, or it does freeze, or it does burn up.
It absolutely goes through those cycles, and we have nothing to do with it. Whether or not we're here doesn't matter. I mean, if you really, truly believe in climate change, and you truly believe that that's something that's man-made, okay, that means you must believe in genocide. There are 8 billion Americans, 8 billion people on the planet. Yes, that's even after 2020. The population increased. Amazing. What a shock. The planet didn't get depleted in 2020. We continued to populate. Yeah. So there's 8 billion people all breathing. We breathe. We eat. We have excrements, which affect the climate like any other creature. If you're so terrified about climate change, the only way you can reduce that is by reducing the number of people. So ultimately, people who believe in climate change believe in genocide, because that's the only way you can effectively, based on current technology for the next 50 years at least, the only effective way to address the climate is to remove the population, remove our impact on the planet in terms of breathing, food, power, everything. The only answer is kill a bunch of people.
Depopulation.
That's it. Be afraid of the climatologists. They're dangerous people.
Because it seems to be a play with a few of the big elites, this depopulation side of things. There was that guy, I forgot his name, who the author of *Sapiens*. Yuval. I think his name's Yuval Harry.
Yuval Noah Harari?
Yeah, he said that depopulation is the only way to save the world from climate change.
You're going to hear more people saying that. You're going to hear it. I'm surprised. What's her name? Greta doesn't say it, or hasn't said it yet. She will. They have no idea because it's the natural conclusion of their. It's the natural consequence of their conclusions. They have to be able to change the temperature of the world the way that they have decided we need to would require the entire world doing nothing but adjusting ourselves and the world nonstop every day for at least a decade. That's not going to happen. I mean, we just had COP28, which is a useless display of virtue signal on climate change. And what did we see? So they all got together, and Kamala Harris took credit for something that the United States has been doing since 2015. So if anyone's going to get credit, I guess you can give it to Obama, in that the United States has reduced more greenhouse gases than the entire planet. No one does it as close as the United States. In fact, the only person who comes close is the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom does about one-sixth the amount of climate change reduction that the United States does per year. And we've been doing this since 2015. And suddenly Kamala Harris came out and said, see, the United States, it's because of Joe Biden. No, it's not. You're an idiot. You're counting on other people being idiots. This has been the fact every year since 2015. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden or Democrats or politics whatsoever. We've already done this. And yet, in COP28, they're talking about America has to pay other nations because America is the problem. We're the solution. We're already doing better than everyone else. The very people who are telling us we need to pay other countries, we have to pay the third world, have worse climate results than America does. They have reduced less than the United States has, both on a year-by-year basis and if we're looking over the last decade. They don't compare. And the one person they're not talking to is China, who doesn't care. China could care less. China is not changing the way they do things. And they create more greenhouse gases and more pollution than the United States reduces, which is, again, the leader of the world. And they want to tell, and then they turn around and say, you just don't get it. You're not dealing in climatologists, these climate people, these alarmists, they're not dealing with reality. They're on a whole other plane of existence. Really, they are.
Right. I think because Aaron's hanging on for dear life, we might want to wrap this one up.
Yeah, I wish I was feeling a bit better today, but cheers, Mike. It's been great as usual.
Made it interesting, huh? At least we ended with you guys not being as speechless as we started.
Well, the climate change thing isn't something that's just been brought into by the media. It's been there for a while, so we've had the conversations on that, and we've analysed that and worked out that it's a load of crap. So that one was easy enough.
Yeah, the climate change one's an interesting one because it's something we get taught from a pretty young age. Well, I think me and Cam definitely did in what we call primary school. I think you guys call it elementary school.
Yeah.
You get taught about climate change from that early age, and it's sort of something that's constantly being spoken about all through your school life, university, and then when you get a corporate job, everyone's banging on about in your corporate job as well. It's only once you start come out of that and think outside the box a little bit, you can start to see the cracks in the story.
Because you're not supposed to ask questions. You're just supposed to go, okay, and obey. That's called indoctrination. Oh, didn't you hear this? Didn't they tell you? Yes. Okay, then you just say yes and just be quiet. But it doesn't make any sense. They've never been right. All evidence says they're wrong. And this is their own evidence. When they provide the evidence themselves, it disproves what they just said. And their only answer every time is, just wait, we'll be right. We are going to be right eventually. Really? You gotta be kidding me, guys. That's your answer? Eventually we'll be right. Yeah, okay. Eventually I'll get 00 green on the roulette wheel. But, I'm not counting on that for my rent next week.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Mike, for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I look forward to
Cheers,
seeing
Mike.
the comments.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good at responding to them as well. So we'll look forward to them too. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Cheers.